I'm going to turn it over to you.
Y'all hear me? All right. So I'm Jill Gambrow. I am with Big Brothers Big Sisters of East Central Wisconsin. Our office is up in Neenah, but we serve all of Winnebago County. So that's what brings me to GOVoL. I've been here for 2.5 years as the volunteer engagement specialist. And I was the WVCA board rep until recently when my term limit was up and I decided to step away. And Brad Creighton is the interim seat on the board for that because he's already on the board for like 6 other things. So why not? So I'm going to do my presentation on my top 10 Tobi takeaways from the WVCA conference in May. And then after that, Brad is going to kind of facilitate a little bit of discussion, what's going on with you all, what's going on with you that maybe pertains to what we talked about in the presentation or other stuff that's on your minds. Before we do that, Brad, since I mentioned WVCA, is there any updates you want to give on what the latest is, what's going on, and then I'll kind of finish up my intro.
Sure, just a couple little highlights, things to be aware about at WVCA. We're going to do a book club, but this time it's not a book. We just finished a book club. This is on an article written about volunteer shortages, and talking about how to kind of address volunteer shortages, maybe we need to reframe the questions that we're asking. It's an article was written by Holly Daniels, who is from MAVA, the Minnesota Alliance for Volunteer. I forget what the A stands for in MAVA. It's the Minnesota WVCA, but
Alliance, isn't it Alliance?
I think it probably is,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so that's going to start August 16th. So if you are interested in that, let me know and can get you some more information on the book club there. Uh, Conference planning for next year, since you're talking about Tobi and the conference this year, is well underway. The team is headed for an overnight in Pleasant Prairie to get the lay of the land and get the hardcore planning started. And then just something to keep on the radar. I'm not sure what's going to come out of it because it is literally just starting. But if you're aware of Points of Light, which is a national organization for volunteering, they're kind of retooling, refocusing some of their mission, and they're going to start to do a big focus and research and everything into the formal decline of volunteering in the United States and around the world. Um, and they talked about incorporating some groups like WVCA and maybe even some more regional groups like ours here, GOVoL, etc., in some of that. So that is literally just beginning. That focus won't start till next year, but just to know that it's going on, and we maybe ask some questions for input or whatnot. I'm not sure what that might look like, but it's on the horizon. So that's all I got.
All right. Thanks, Brad. Um, let's dive in. So some of you may have been at the WVCA conference in early May. I think it was the 9th, 10th, 8th, 9th, 10th. Some of you may have been there. I was really, really energized by Tobi. I appreciated the educational keynote as opposed to an inspirational keynote. I found a lot of value in it. And these are my 10 takeaways from Tobi. And I was not, I mean, I heard of Tobi, but I didn't really know um a lot about who she was and her experience, and then getting to the conference and people are saying, oh, Tobi Johnson is the Brene Brown of volunteer management. And I was like, okay, all right, this will be good. So I was super just impressed. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, she could have talked longer, of course, and gotten into more of the meat of it. But I really just wanted to share what my 10 takeaways are. They might be different for you. Or if you weren't there, this may be a great kind of recap on what you missed. I will say, I just want to be clear that these are my takeaways. I may be paraphrasing Tobi in some regards. I may be interpreting what she said and how I interpreted it, but I'm not taking credit for any of this. This is Tobi's brilliance and my interpretation of that. Nothing here is really anything that I want to take credit for in any way, and I want to make sure I'm being clear that this really comes from her expertise, her brilliance. So let's dive in. I'll get my PowerPoint up here as long as I don't mess it up. All right. Y'all see? Okay, cool. My top 10 Tobi takeaways. So let's dive into slide number 1. The first thing she talked about was old recruitment strategies versus modern recruitment strategies, as she called them. And somewhere in that conversation, she said, I'm referring to them as old recruitment strategies. I'm not saying not to do them. I'm just saying this is more traditional stuff, and you've got to evaluate whether or not it still works for you. Is it still working in your community? Are you getting what you're looking for? So really, she wasn't necessarily shutting down these old recruitment methods. She's just pointing out that they're more traditional, and it's really up to you to evaluate whether this stuff works anymore or not in your community, depending on what your community looks like and what they respond to. So, old recruitment methods. This is what she said. Posters, tablings, your general awareness. We all talk about general awareness and whether or not that's effective. Does general awareness convert to volunteers? So we could have a whole discussion on that, I'm sure. Cold calling, talking to service clubs, talking to your Rotaries, your Kiwanis, all of that, and spreading volunteer opportunities by word of mouth. So that's what she refers to as old recruitment methods. More modern recruitment methods, she refers to as recruitment campaigns, which in Big Brothers Big Sisters, we nationally, that's talked about a lot and done a lot. Web, social media, and building a following. That's a new modern recruitment method, building a following, using social media, using the web. Utilizing SEO. If you don't know what search engine optimization is, it has to do a lot with keywords and how people find you when they're Googling. So that's what that's about. And there are strategies and ways to use SEO so that people can find you more easily. Basically, so you pop up on page 1 of a Google search instead of like page 5. Strategic partnerships and developing volunteer ambassadors. So I think when she talked about volunteer ambassadors, what she's talking about is rather than this more organic word of mouth, volunteer ambassadors is also word of mouth, but it's strategic and intentional. That's the difference. So that was my interpretation of what she meant and what was different about those two things. So that's what she talked about there. And I thought those were good things to point out and good things to evaluate with the team here, and what I, as the only recruitment person and the only volunteer manager, spend my time on. So number 2, by the way, if you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat, and Amy is monitoring the chat. She may save some of the questions for the end if she thinks that they're going to bring up a larger discussion, or fire them off for me. So I will probably check in with Amy every couple slides and see if there's anything. So number 2, Tobi talked about micro conversions, and we talk about that a lot at Big Brothers Big Sisters. We talk about converting inquiries, so people who show an interest by filling out an application, versus do they actually become a mentor. So we call that the conversion rate or the yield rate. So Toby touched on that as well, and she said, you need to monitor your micro conversions in that every touch point, you want to monitor every touch point and how it converts. So what she was alluding to is that people don't decide to volunteer with you like one time and that's it. Every step in your enrollment process is a decision. So they're deciding over and over and over with you if they want to continue and end up making it all the way to the end of actually putting in a volunteer hour with you. So, what she's talking about analyzing your micro conversions is where are you losing them? In what step are you losing them? Is it the same place in the process? Why do you think that is? Is there a way to gather that information? Is there a way to find out why you're losing? Can you survey those people? Will they even answer you? So how do you solve that? Where you're losing people, how do you solve that problem? Can you solve that problem? So these are all things, even though we talk a lot about converting to a mentor here, it got me thinking a little bit deeper when she talked about that. It got me thinking about um, greater analysis, spending greater time on that and being more strategic about it and solving those problems. I know we all think we've got to race around and get out to the next tabling and the next tabling, but we may have, my goal is to have less inquiries, less of that top level first handshake kind of stuff, and more people making it to the end. So work smarter, not harder. I think that was Tommy Boy's dad's advice or something like that. But anyway, it's advice everywhere. But that was number 2 for me. Number 3, chasing diversity. I thought Toby had a really strong message here, and I could see how it would ruffle some feathers, but I also really appreciated what she said. She introduced the word psychographics to me. I had not heard that term before, but after she described it, I knew what she was talking about. So we all measure demographics. I'm sure you do. We do big time. That's things like ethnicity, age, education level, all those real well-defined categories of what we fit our volunteers into. Psychographics, that is people's attitudes about things. When your volunteer says, I just want to make a difference, or I'm new to the community and I want to get involved. Those are some attitudes, some traits, their lifestyle, their interests, their personality, different psychological criteria that you have for what you're looking for in a volunteer. So Toby's strong message that I referred to was, she said, are you feeding your desire to be diverse and to call yourselves inclusive by chasing demographics instead of who are the people that are your volunteers? What are the common threads in these folks? What are their similarities? Who and I did read another thing about strategic recruitment from another guru. I can't remember who, but calling it like if you recruit for this kind of thing, they didn't use the term psychographics, but if you recruit for traits and personality and attitudes, the demographics will come. You will have diversity in your demographics if you recruit based on psychographics. And Toby had kind of that same message. So, I know for us in mentoring, yes, we're looking for diversity. We're looking to serve a diverse cross section of kids. But I am fascinated by the fact that if I recruit for those psychographics, those other traits, that my demographics would fall in line. So I'm open to that. I'm open to that notion. So Amy, I saw something pop up in the chat. Anything we want to discuss? You're muted. I can't hear you.
Just something that Brad said that Toby had put a mapping exercise together to figure this out. So he
Okay.
was going to send me information, which I'll include in our upcoming newsletter.
Excellent. That'd be awesome. Thank you. Any questions anybody wants to shout out that you haven't typed in the chat? All right, we'll keep rolling. I have no idea how long this presentation is going to take, so it's going to be a real nice surprise for all of us. Number 4. Okay. Number 4. This surprised me. She said your number 1 biggest asset is, yep, it's your website. I didn't expect that. She said it is not your social media because generally speaking, social media does not inspire action. People scroll through it, but it doesn't necessarily convert to somebody completing an application or clicking an inquiry button or whatever your first step is. It doesn't convert overall. I will admit, if I think about that, I'll admit sometimes I'm too lazy to click the like button. Like, really? Like, I really like this whatever post, and I don't even move my little finger over to click the like button. So, yeah, there's like a little bit of like laziness and just kind of mindlessness with social media. And I think it takes a lot to inspire actually making that step. So I kind of agree with that. So what she said is that it takes more energy and a higher interest level to actually go and visit your webpage. You actually have intrigued them enough, have inspired them enough in some way in person at Volunteer Fest, at Day of Caring. Some way they were inspired. It might be in person, it might be online. They went to your website and looked at your stuff. And for Big Brothers Big Sisters, we have Big Brothers Big Sisters of America, and then we have our local agency. So coming to our local website is a big win. Um, so I would agree that takes more effort. There's more interest level. The other thing, as I already mentioned, is can they find you in a Google search? So what kind of keywords do you have in your website that Google is picking up on? And for us, when we say big and little, people that's oh, what do you call that? Like a colloquialism or something. It's not, people know the word mentor, but it's that kitschy stuff that we're using is not real searchable. So on our website, the number of times we say big, do you want to be a big? Do you want to, it's like, they're not going to find us with that. We need to use the word mentor. And other things that people would type in. So think about like your cutesy stuff that you call stuff and how searchable that is and how much it's popping up for you. I know Amy's pretty sharp when it comes to this kind of stuff. So I think Amy could be a resource for you as well. In things like this. I'm sorry if I'm throwing you under the bus, Amy, but yeah, I think that's her world. So you can always get some advice and some help from Amy. That's part of what she's here for. So yeah, that's number 4. Let's see. Number 5. Toby talked about the thing that volunteers and prospective volunteers don't really care about. They do not care about your behind the scenes work. So whatever you want people to feel about their experience, it's got to be, you've got to keep them moving along. It's got to be about how easy it is for them. Once you start explaining yourself and how long it's taking you, and sorry I didn't get back to you, they're done. They're tuning you out. People don't really get what other people's jobs are like. I think we can work at having the most empathy we can, but we really don't know what other people's jobs are like. You can't start explaining your job to prospective volunteers and what goes on behind the scenes. they might appease you and they do not care. You've got to keep this moving. Toby referred to the enrollment process as an easy 3 to 5 steps. So, and are you inspiring them all the way through the process? The yucky stuff like the forms and the training they don't want to do, even though they need it. How are you converting? How are you converting your way through that? Are you giving them a lot of nuts and bolts in your first conversation with them? They're out. I know that you've got to check those boxes, but I think you have to be strategic about when you do that, so that they're already in. I'm in with you. I've taken 4 steps. I'm here. So that was important for me to remember. It's important for me to remember they do not care about what paper shuffling I'm doing over here. They really don't. So, and I'm not, people are very caring and all of that, but let's get real. So I liked that. I like that she said that. I like that Toby pointed that out for me. Are there things popping up in the chat I need to know about, or are we good?
We're just having our own side conversation over
Okay.
here.
Real
All good.
Okay. I don't want to ignore somebody's question or pass by a slide or two and have something not be addressed. So, all right, number 6. The surefire way to lose is with a donate button. I made this mistake. I did. I had myself convinced that, well, let's just keep asking for everything. And I started putting a QR code for volunteering and a QR code for donating on some of our marketing stuff, some of our print marketing. And I thought, I got to get something out of it. I've got to get something out of people. And what Toby said made total sense, and I've stopped doing it immediately. People will opt for the path of least resistance, and if you give them the option to donate, they'll donate, and they'll feel like they did something good, and they will never think about volunteering with you because they've already completed an action. They completed an action by making a donation. So you're shooting yourself in the foot. There's a separate department that works on fund development and all of that, and simultaneously asking for volunteers and or donating, we will lose every time. We will lose. And I know we need the money, but it just has to be separate asks. You have to keep that that dividing line, and it has to be a separate ask. So that was a hard lesson for me to learn. I thought, oh, I'm just going to ask for everything and people will do, I'm going to lose out. And my job is recruiting. So I need to stay in my lane with that. All right. Lesson number 7 from Toby. Toby suggested that we imagine our volunteer, and she said to create a volunteer persona or an avatar. I don't even know what that means, but whatever. I'm old. I'm real old. I thought it was a movie. I thought it was Avatar. That was like a movie. I don't know. Anyway, so imagine your volunteer and start to identify some of those psychographics that I talked about that are associated with your volunteer, this person that you need, a volunteer persona. So, who are the people that fit this description of your different volunteer jobs? And they may not know about you. So describe these volunteers and some of their qualities and traits and where they come from and who they are. And maybe they don't even know that they could come and volunteer with you. So, so now what? So how do you reach these volunteer personas that you've described? Toby's examples that we worked through were, she gave us an example of a volunteer hospital receptionist. What are the qualities of that kind of person? Friendly, outgoing, good at chit chat, has a friendly phone disposition, maybe family-oriented person, social person. So we went through all of these sort of qualities. We did touch on some demographic stuff, age, um, her like career or former career, if she's retired, that kind of thing. And I know I'm saying she, but it could be anybody. So think about if it's easier for you to think of like a very well-defined kind of volunteer position, and then getting into some of your tougher to describe volunteer positions. And then she said, get that persona reflected on your website. Use keywords that those psychographics would respond to. Have them see themselves in the experience you have to offer. Here at Big Brothers Big Sisters, all the time when they put together marketing stuff, print marketing, or something going on our website, all the time I harp on it. You can't keep showing pictures of matches where it's a big sister who's 28 years old. I have to have I have to demonstrate mentors who are in their 50s and 60s. I have to have guys. I have to have guys who are 60 and guys who are 28. You know, our images I have to have versatile stuff. So when you're using pictures of your volunteers, are you being intentional about showing some diversity in what you have so they could see themselves in it? I was at the Oshkosh Business Expo. This was last year, and I had a couple of guys in suits, probably in their 50s or early 60s, walk by, and they're like, "Well, I'm too old for that." And I'm like, "Hold on, hold on. You're not too old to be a mentor." But for some reason, with Big Brothers Big Sisters, there's this notion of there's kind of an age cutoff to being a big. There's not. We have a lady who's 80. She's 80. She's a mentor. Awesome. So you've got to kind of dispel those myths as far as what a volunteer for you looks like, and try to capture those psychographics with images. It's an interesting challenge. Any questions? Is that sparking any conversation? We can certainly have that when Brad takes over, but is there anything anybody wants to comment on now? All right, moving on. My number 8 takeaway, kind of spills over from what I was just talking about with a volunteer persona, and having it on your website. The other thing that Tobi suggested is to create a self-assessment tool and put it on your website. So make the decision obvious for them. This is, she called it this is perfect for you method. So what, can you do like a little self-assessment questionnaire, 3 to 5 questions. And then at the end, it says, this opportunity is perfect for you. This would make a great opportunity. Make it a little bit inspiring. Make it about them. Make it inspiring. 3 to 5 questions. At the end of the assessment, the application to become a volunteer is right there. The button is right there. The first question on the application is right there. Don't make them go searching. Don't give them time to think. The button is right there. So I thought this was a really cool, I've never thought about that. But what 3 to 5 questions could I ask to make mentoring sound easy, sound like it's for them? Very, very simple. Right on our website that would bring them to our application. That for me was something I don't know that I would have ever thought of that. And it's a really great idea because people, as much as they want to make a difference and be a part of the community, there is something that has to be satisfying for themselves. There is something that they're searching for. And I'll say with mentors, it is about almost all the time, it is about something to do with their story, something that was lacking, in their childhood in a relationship, or the opposite, something they had that they know was pretty special that a lot of people did not have, and they've got to do that for somebody else. So if you are running a shelter, if you're running a food pantry, what in their childhood about food insecurity was a part of their childhood growing up in their own household or their best friend down the street that they didn't know had a food insecurity issue until they were 14 or whatever. They had that light bulb moment when they realized their best friend um, had poverty issues or that kind of thing. So every volunteer, I would say, no matter what, has something about themselves that's pulling them to your organization and capitalizing on that. So that brings me to my number 9, which my bachelor's degree is in clinical psych, but I forgot about this. And so Tobi gave me a great reminder, which is that the emotion part of our brain and the decision making part of our brain is the same part of our brain. So where your emotions lie and where your decision making happens in the front of your brain is the same place. So how do we use that to our advantage? The heart decides things, and the intellect justifies that decision. So you decide things with your heart, and you justify with your intellect, and it's happening either one or the other, depending on other personality traits about you, depending on other qualities, depending on if you have trauma brain and what other parts of your brain light up or don't light up in your ability to make a decision. So there's a lot of other factors. It's not just one thing. But this is the stuff that's happening. So how do you tap into emotion and decision making very quickly at the same time? And a big part of that is figuring out what's inspiring them and figuring out what is personally connected to them. And we learn that by tapping into our current volunteers and our past volunteers and finding those trends. Boy, a lot of our volunteers had this light bulb moment with food insecurity at their in grade school, in high school, or that is an issue in their household or whatever. So where can we find that? And our current volunteers and past volunteers, that's the best way. So in their enrollment process, are you able to find out what got them to apply? So in my orientation session, I'll say, what got you to apply? Oh, I've always known about you. Okay. Did you see a sign recently? Did you see a Facebook post recently? How does it relate to you? I don't give up on like, how have you heard about us? That's not enough for me. I want to know more. But my role, we're in the business of relationships here, so I've got to get at that pretty quickly. But also I feel like in your positions as well, getting at the heart of why they want to do this and uncovering what they may not know. You've got to do it quickly. I get you don't have a lot of time. Some of you have hundreds and hundreds of volunteers. But there's got to be some small, simple ways you can tap into that. And I'd love to have even more discussion about that with everybody. I'm only talking about a lot of stuff with my frame of reference, but I hope I'm tapping into the work that you guys do as well. Tobi said one really cool thing that I was like, yep, that's something we all need to remember. She said, people who are busy stay busy. People who are busy stay busy. Golly, how can we use that to our advantage? Ain't that the truth? It's the truth. So when people tell us they're too busy or not right now, oh, what would be a good response to that? Or do we just say, hey, people who are busy stay busy. Come on now. And are we that bold? So I'm kind of experimenting with what that means. What does that mean to me? What does that mean to my rebuttal in hearing that they're too busy or whatever. Tell me more about what you're too busy with. Tell me more about your life. I'm building a relationship with them so that they build a relationship with a kid. So I'm kind of experimenting with that and how I talk to people and how I find those real busy people because they're doing this, okay? Um, so that was great for me. My number 10 is a little bit of a wrap up, stuff I've already talked about. She said fish where the fish are. Thought that was a pretty cool thing to say. Um, I've touched on this already. Where do your volunteers go in person? Where are they located in the community? Your current volunteers and also that volunteer persona that you created of these are the qualities of the volunteers I'm looking for. And then where are they in the community? And then how do I present myself? Back to number one. Here we go. What is my strategy for communicating with them? What is my strategy for connecting with them? So see how this is all related. You build this persona based on what you know about your volunteers, some assumptions that you make. It's okay to make assumptions. It's okay to generalize. A lot of people in this world. So kind of narrow down some qualities, figure out who you've already got, who's really great at this. Where are these people? They don't know about us. I'm going to assume they don't know about us. What do I say about us? How do I present myself out in the community? How do I connect with them? How do I do that online? Where are they online? What are they looking at? What keywords are they typing in? How do I get in front of them? How do I get on page 1 of a Google search? And then when I do, what am I going to say? And Tobi says what we say on our website is really what's going to hook them in. What does our website look like? And how do I talk to our website person about what I just learned from Tobi? I'm still working on that. But I know what we need to do now. So this is kind of these 10 takeaways kind of all fit together and all work together. And that's what I learned. That was what I took away from Tobi, and that's how I packaged it up for myself. That's how I put all of these different slides of hers together and saw how it related. Does that make sense? So where are these people online? Where are they in person? Figure out who they are and then go after it. All right. Thank you all very much. This was a lot of fun to put together. It energized me all over again. Here we are 2 months out from the conference. I have done a little bit of work with what I learned from Tobi, but I have more to do. And putting together this presentation reminded me of that because I left very passionate and very energized, very appreciative that I learned things, that I gained more tools. I think it's very exciting to feel inspired and motivated, but sometimes it's hard to know what to do with that. I have actual stuff that I could do with this. So this is a plug for the WVCA conference. When you come, you will leave with tools. You will leave with stuff that you can implement. There are very inspirational things that happen, very exciting things that happen, very cool people that you will meet and stay in touch with, but you will also leave with tools and resources, which is very important for me when I go to a conference. That's it. Questions, thoughts, whatnot. This is a little bit where I leave off and Brad kind of takes over, but I'm here. I'm happy to chime in.
Jill, thank you for putting together your insights and your thoughts. One of the things as I was sitting there listening to Tobi, and she didn't necessarily directly address it, but when you just watch her, if you've ever heard her speak or been on a webinar of hers, she exudes positivity in a tough market right now for volunteers, right? And I think that's a big part of it. I think that if you can Kind of what my biggest takeaway is she kind of was placing it as a puzzle, like create this persona and find where the people are, and to me that's appealing because I'm a puzzle geek. I do all the escape rooms and things like that. And I'm like, instead of getting frustrated in the fact that, yeah, I can look at the numbers and see engagements declining and retaining is harder and whatnot, or I can shift to puzzle mode and be like, all right, let's dig in and solve this puzzle. And Toby's already given me, a whole bunch of tips here on what that could be. So, Jill, thank you for your insights. What about you guys? What's something that Jill said in there that stuck out that I would love to hear something that like you heard that you could immediately start kind of like working on or doing. Go ahead, Amy.
I so you brought up the persona thing again. And if you're ever wondering where to begin with that, I may have some exercises for you folks if you need it. But I also wanted to mention Chat GPT has been phenomenal, and I've been brainstorming with a few of the agencies for their volunteer descriptions for their needs. And I've actually used Chat GPT to say, what characteristics or skills does someone need to do this type of volunteer opportunity? And you'll be surprised at the wealth of information that comes through, and you can edit it to make sense for you. But as you build those personas or trying to figure out what skill sets or characteristics those people need, if you just want to do a quick search, I just would suggest that. It's rather impressive.
Yeah, that's great, Amy, because like if I've got a persona that is a 68-year-old woman of color, I know nothing about that. However, I can use resources on top of the relationships that I've already built with people that fit that persona, as well as other resources that are available to tap into some of that. And don't be afraid, you can definitely have more than one persona. The idea, Jill mentioned it, the idea behind it is not that you're pigeonholing yourself into this is the only type of volunteer you have. It's more that you're focusing your messaging. So instead of having just this broad, I'm going to appeal to everybody, that's not necessarily as effective as I'm going to appeal to this person, then this person, then this person. You'll still get everybody, but you're appealing to them in a more direct way.
Yeah,
I,
it's about what kind of people volunteer with us. What kind of people? What are they about? And
Mhm.
then where are more of those kinds of people? And their age and their ethnicity and all of that is secondary. Um, and that's it. That's an important, especially in my role, that's an important thing to think about because we do chase diversity. Um, and it's very difficult. It's difficult because we're not a particularly diverse area.
Mhm.
Um, so it has its sets of challenges.
Yeah.
I'd also like to mention when you talk about making it easy, um and going through and again helping folks with their descriptions, the one thing that comes up probably the most frequently is the amount of information that goes into the description that might be slightly, I shouldn't sugarcoat it, that would be a turnoff,
Yeah.
because people tend to get right into the meat of it and they're like, there'll be 5 hours of training. I'm telling you, that's going to turn somebody off right away. So again, focus on the persona, focus on those skills and the characteristics of the type of people you're looking for so that they can at least buy in initially and save some of that stuff for the personal one-on-one conversation when you're really trying to figure out if this is the right match for both of you. But the initial description, the initial recruitment efforts of just trying to get somebody to hit respond on our site, just be thoughtful in what you're putting out there that may be, you're if you put in that barrier of some of those things, you're just making it more difficult for everybody.
Any other things that any of you heard that really struck a chord and said, "Ooh, I might tweak this, adjust this, or ooh, we're doing this really, really well, and you'd like to share what you found that works in that.
Anything you didn't love, anything you haven't had a good experience with that she describes, anything you would disagree with, you would argue with.
You know, I would say too, I love that you brought up, Jill, that she mentioned that every step in your process is a decision. I've heard from so many people who've gotten frustrated where they'll recruit someone, they'll get them in the process, and then all of a sudden they ghost them. Like, raise your hand if you've experienced that. I think most of us have in some way, shape, or form, right? And I think that instead of that presents a great opportunity to be like, okay, this is when they stopped responding. What happened in that moment where they went from, all right, yeah, I'm on board, I want to do it, to psh, all of a sudden being gone. So I think that's important, and it can take some real hard honesty with ourselves. There was another speaker at the conference who talked about dealing with difficult people, and without getting into all of it, the focus was really on what can I do differently. So it's a tendency to say, oh, they just weren't a good fit, so they were gone, instead of taking the hard look at yourself and saying, what happened here? What could I do differently? And really examining that. Maybe it was the person, and you'll find that out. But if you don't do the examination, you're never necessarily going to know that. The other thing that really, Jill, your number nine, really struck true to me, is that the emotional side and the decision making side of the brain is the same thing. That ties so much into volunteer retention as well, right? When someone's volunteering for you and they have that emotional experience, whether it's a positive one, man, now they're really hooked for life if they weren't already, or if it's a negative one and they make this strong emotional decision to be undone, but you don't have that conversation. You're like, oh, it'll blow over. Well, maybe it won't, right? Like if we're in that high emotional state and someone makes a snap decision, like, follow up on those things, talk to those folks, find out what's going on. They may still decide to take a step back or whatnot. But if you can get into what's causing some of those big emotional responses, it can help you retain as people are experiencing them.
Because these folks are going to be your advocates, and so you don't want them leaving and not having an understanding of that, because you also don't want them going out and saying something negative when it was just a miscommunication or something you could have remedied. So just think about the long-term effects. And I know that probably happens too when a match might not be working out and you may have to make a tough decision to say this isn't working out. You want to think through how, what's the plan to make sure that they don't go out then and
Mhm.
and be a non-advocate, if that's the way I could say it.
So I jotted down a couple questions that I'd love to ask. Has anybody, and I would love to hear what it is, has anybody created a volunteer persona? Maybe you didn't know that was a phrase or a title that can use, but has any of you created kind of that target person? And what have you found? Have you found success in that, or has it not worked as you had thought? And what is your target volunteer persona?
I'm going to jump in real quick, Brad. Um, I need a little bit of print marketing for when I do like tablings at Volunteer Fest for you guys and stuff like that. And we have this business card sized like little marketing piece that people, prospective mentors, people who might want to be mentors, could take from our table, and had our QR code to our website on it, whatever. And so before I got here, they had the little business card that said, 95 kids on the waiting list, become a big today or whatever. And it was fine. And then we ran out of those. And then we've got an intern here this summer who's like marketing graphic stuff. And he came in and I said, we've got to do something different. And so, long story short, the card now says it has pictures of matches, our bigs and littles, 3 of our matches, of all different variety of bigs. And the card says in real big letters, "Who was your mentor?"
Mm.
Because as I just described in the presentation, there's something about these folks that come to us of a relationship that was really good for them in childhood, or something they were lacking in childhood that they recognize and caused their life to go the way that it did, and they want to remedy that by coming to our organization and mentoring kid. So who was your mentor?
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
because I believe that's part of the volunteer persona. Is there something about their story that's bringing them here? So that
Yep.
was why we went with that question.
Michelle Schultz, did you have?
Oh
a-
yeah, I run the farmers market, and I need different types. I need different types of people for different positions. For example, when I recruit for my opening morning crew, that's kind of a rough and rowdy crowd. I don't know what it is about 5 in the morning and having lots of muscle to put up tents, but I certainly don't pair my churchgoers with my morning crew. and then and then of course we service a lot of food share clients, and I find that those types of recruits are retired ladies.
Mm.
Retired ladies really like to be involved in the food share. And then, of course, we have our garbage cleanup crews, and those are typically my community service people. So I find that different groups I recruit for different functions just because of what the job takes. So when people approach me, I try to have a small conversation with them to see what their work shifts are. Do they prefer morning? Do they prefer night? Do you have any physical limitations? Because the garbage duty is literally 40 to 50 pounds you have to lift.
Yeah.
So, and it's dirty and it's wet and it's messy. So I get a lot of community service people for that. And then I hire some college kids for that.
Love
So because it pays pretty good. But as far as the persona thing, when someone talks with me, I first like to see, are they morning people or afternoon people? So then I can go, okay, so if you're not an early riser, here's what's available in the afternoon. Would you be interested in, maybe they have a nice personality, because we have a promotional side of the farmers market tent. I'm always needing someone there that basically tries to get a buck out of people's pocket every time we give something away. So are you good at fundraising and talking to people? So,
Mhm.
I try to match them with what they see themselves as good at. And that's where we start. But then a lot of times they'll say, well, I'd like to go over here and try this. So if you ever have somebody who calls in, because like the EBT job, those ladies there, those retired ladies, literally fight over that position. They're all arguing, well, it's my turn. It's my turn. I'm like, it's a good problem to have, but I wish I could find more 5 a.m. people. So, but
Yeah.
that's
That's
what
a great, when you have when you have that clear of understanding, it really makes creating those or those volunteer opportunities descriptions and headlines much easier, because you can be way clever, and Michelle could literally, the headline could be, looking for those bright, shiny people at 5 a.m. And you're going to know immediately if you're that person or not. You're probably going to click on it right away, or you're not.
yeah.
And so that's awesome, Michelle.
Well, and the other thing we highlight is that our volunteer opportunities are typical about 2 to 3 hours at a time. So it's not a big part of everyone's day. It's Saturday. Not everyone wants to volunteer every Saturday. I let people know that, if you have Saturdays available, we try to use as many volunteers as we can that are available on certain days. Just because everybody doesn't want to work every Saturday in the summer. So I just let people know that we do have volunteers, but it's always nice to give the ones we have a break. You're doing us a favor. So when in reality, we're just desperate for help. So,
But if you want to be where things are happening, again, you have, I would hope, one of the easier volunteer opportunities to recruit for, because you're where everything's happening on Saturday morning.
it is,
Mhm.
but people people don't want to come out on Saturdays. That everybody's got stuff going on. That's the biggest challenge I find. Everybody's got stuff going on, or stuff comes up on Saturdays. So that's the biggest challenge, is the fact that it's on the weekend.
Mm. Tracy, you'd mentioned in the chat that you said you find busy people make the best mentors. Would you mind expanding on what makes them some of your best mentors? What is it about it if you've been able to put kind of your finger on that?
I'm gonna be honest with you, Brad. I used to do some direct sales, so that's so like Mary Kay and stuff like that. So that was always a line that was used, because they can organize their time. It could be catered to like what Jill does. What kinds of things do you do in your busy time? They might be doing things that they could take their little with. Maybe they like to go
Mhm.
fishing as part of their busy time. So they just know how to organize their time. They know how to do a busy schedule. And then that's a great time to also offer that. It's only an hour or two that you may need to invest.
Mm.
You guys know what you want for a time frame, but they usually can busy people can find a way if they really want to do it. Sometimes I find people use that because they really don't want to do it.
Mhm.
Right. So it's just an easy way to get someone off my back because I'm too busy. But I think you got what kinds of things do you like to do in your busy time?
Mm.
They
I
might be
like
able to do something that you do.
Yeah. I like how you said that because I think a lot of times we hear, oh, I'm just super busy. I don't have time right now. And it's an easy, like you said, Tracy, it's an easy out for them. And sometimes it's an easy way for us to just be like, okay, we'll check in later. But I like how you also said, Tracy, there, don't give up on that person, right? Tap into that a little bit more. Learn about what makes them busy and talk to them about how, oh, well, you're already doing it. Let's just incorporate another person in there and you're mentoring at the same time or whatever that sales pitch needs to be for that.
Yep. They could be someone that's going to the farmer's market.
Yep.
Mhm.
Or to sit at blah blah blah. You know?
Absolutely. Thanks.
Yep.
We see a lot of that in Girl Scouts too, where I say like, people are always so busy and they don't have the time to volunteer. But I said sometimes when you're really, really busy, it makes it easier to be the leader or a troop volunteer because you get to schedule it when it's convenient for you to do it. And so if you are really, really busy and have a lot going on, this makes sure your kid can get to troop meetings is because you're the one scheduling it. But it is 100% just an excuse for most people.
Hmm.
Yeah, I did that when I coached soccer. I'll coach soccer because I can schedule it for practice around my schedule.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very true. I do want to be conscious of our time here. A couple things with Tobi Johnson here. I know it was asked in the chat about a recording of the keynote, and it was not recorded, but let me give you a couple different resources here that can help out with that. I did put in there the volpro.net. That is the website for Volunteer Pro. That's an organization that Tobi did start. They do lots of trainings, webinars, things like that. Definitely sign up if you're not already to get on their mailing list. They send monthly, quarterly, I'm not sure how frequently it comes out, resources, tips. Some of them are great, some of them are surfacey, some of them are not great, but they're free. And that's the right price for sure. They do have, if you are looking for hardcore consulting and stuff like that. They do have membership options, which involve coaches and things like that. You can look at it. It's not cheap. I will say that it is not cheap, but if it is, it's well put together and well run, and if it's something you want for your program, you can investigate that. She does have another website for Tobi Johnson and Associates, and that is tobijohnson.com. This is kind of her own personal business, much more about consulting, case studies. She does give out some free resources there. But the one thing for sure I want to point you towards, if you're a podcast listener, on her website, she runs a podcast. It's called Volunteer Nation. And she talks about much of the same stuff that she talked about at the keynote. There's like currently 118 episodes of it. It goes way back to 2022. You can get it on iTunes and I think Spotify and most of the other podcast hosting sites as well. Um, So that's definitely a good listen. She taught, episode 59 talks about the website stuff that Jill was talking about and how to utilize that. There are some in there about creating volunteer persona. So a lot of the stuff that she talked about at the keynote are also represented on episodes of the podcast as well. I would encourage you to check that out as well if you're a podcast listener or if you have a little bit of free time. They're short. They're usually, I think, about a half an hour or so long each. So it's not a terribly long listen. So yeah, check those out. And hopefully you can find some stuff there that can help out. With that, Amy, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you both, Jill and Brad, for that information. And thank you guys for jumping in and sharing your own personal experience. It's so helpful to hear what other people are going through, whether it's what's working for them or that even just knowing that you might be going through the same thing as each other. That's why we're here, to help each other. So with that, I just wanted this is an opportunity to, if anybody wants to share any current wins or challenges with the group, I'll open it up. Because, let's leverage the folks here and see how we can help in any way or to celebrate your wins. So we're here for everybody. So I'll open it up. I can share, I feel like a personal win for me is I just continuously am impressed with this group. It's not easy to get those volunteers these days, and I just am inspired, and I think it's a win with the group that we just are constantly moving forward and finding creative ways to find those volunteers. Anybody else? Michelle, how's Michelle Wheeler? The last time we met, you were talking about potentially buying like half a cow or something like that, and
We're
whatever.
still playing with the idea.
Okay.
So it's still,
Gotcha.
we haven't decided against it, but logistically we still are
Working
working
through
on
it.
some of that, and yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
our meal teams have been better this year than last
Mhm.
year as far as how many there are in things. Last year was our first year here. We had never done meals in the summer before. So
Sure.
having that consistency has definitely helped. And so
Well, that's a win.
yes, it definitely is.
Wonderful. Anybody else? Okay. Well, then I don't want to keep you guys any further. I know everybody's super busy, but again, at any point in time, if you guys come up with a challenge and you're looking for some ideas, reach out. We can, we can always find ways to pull the group together or send some emails out to get an opinion. So just let me know how we can help. But thank you again for everybody's time. And I will be sending out the next newsletter shortly, which will have information about the next in-person meeting. So more to come. So wonderful. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jill.
Amy,
Thanks,
for
Amy.
Have a
Thank
good
y'all.
day.
Bye, y'all.
Have a
Take
good
care,
night.
everyone.